Welcome all to Legal Tech Week for April 11th, 2025, the show where we talk about the news of the week from legal tech and legal innovation. Several of us are just back from ABA Tech Show, so we'll talk a little bit about that today and other stuff that's happened. And Let's first go about and do some introductions. Maybe we should start with the legal world's gonzo correspondent here.
Yeah, Joe Patrice from Above the Law. I'm thinking like a lawyer. The joke on hand there about being the Gonzo correspondent is we were just pre-show. We were talking about ChatGPT released a new ask ask it to describe you feature, which a lot of us tried out, and mine came back and referred to me as the legal world's Gonzo correspondent. So that's my title now, I guess.
All right, and Stephanie, did you get to get a title yet?
No, I still just got a bunch of bullet points, which are pretty accurate, but it's not really, it's now struggling to see what I look like. And I'm like, literally, generate a fake picture of myself for my column every week. I don't know why you can't tell. But I am Stephanie Wilkins, Director of Content at Legal Tech Hub, and I'm trying to make it tell me what it knows about me.
All right. And Nikki is the bearded wonder according to ChatGPT.
Yeah, every time I'm Nikki Black. I'm the principal legal insight strategist at FinaPay, parent company of my case, LawPay, DocketWise, and CasePeer. I also write legal tech columns for ABA, Above the Law, and the Daily Record, and I research and author our legal industry report on the FinaPay side of things. And every time I ask ChatGPT to describe me or draw a picture of me or take a picture of me or show a picture of me, it's always like a dude. It's like always a guy. Or if I showed a picture of me, like an actual photo of me, it makes me look. It can't do people that like it did this with Kamala Harris too. If you don't look like a super perky white woman, it can't deal with you, and it doesn't know how to create an image of you, and so it always makes you look like, I don't know, uh, just not what you are in the photo. It never looks like you. So I've sort of given up on ChatGPT to accurately depict or describe me. It's done. Forget about it.
All right, and Julie, how about you? Did you get a title yet?
No, you can just call me the Canadian correspondent. There we go. We'll just lean into all this Canadianness. I drink a cup of maple syrup every day, all of that. I write for Canadian Lawyer, Canadian Bar Association, The Walrus, which is a national interest magazine here in Canada, where I write about legal affairs and technology. Yeah, I haven't tried the image generating part. If you look up pictures of me, you'll see a different hairstyle in every photo. So I don't know what ChatGPT would or any image generating would do with that. And I'm not a perky white lady either, so I'm not sure if it'll be able to like I don't want the AI to implode on itself. So I'm gonna save that. Gonna save
Well,
that.
it's kind of cool because it says invites you to upload a photo of yourself if you want to kind of guide it. But if you don't upload a photo, then it just makes up what it imagines you look like, which is how you end up with like a bearded Nikki Black. And I don't know if Jason Wilson is sometime in the audience is here today, but he came up as a woman in his imagination on ChatGPT. So
So I got it.
mine came out with slightly less white hair, more salt and pepper hair. So I like that.
It finally made me a woman, but with short dark hair. But it also they're like it described my whole vibe, but not my, race or gender or anything like that. So I was curious what it would do, but it did make me a white woman with short dark hair. But it was like, I don't know. I'm calling this the journalist in black. I'm like, okay, that's not that far off. Just
That's
give me
good.
different hair. They're like,
That's
you
good.
like moody things. I'm like, truth.
Uh, all right. Well, see, we got some Canadian pride going on in the chat over here. Are we going to be question is going to be the 51st state or the 52nd state? Which is Greenland first or is Canada first?
Wait,
Um,
is the Panama Canal off the table now?
oh, I forgot
I'm
about the
I'm I'm
Panama
I'm
Canal.
out of the loop, guys.
We're all out of the loop. Um, All right. Well, speaking of the loop, it takes us to Chicago, and
Mm.
we were actually out of the loop in Chicago, also literally because we were at the McCormick Conference Center for ABA Tech Show last week, which is about as far from the loop in Chicago as you can get. It seemed like. Um, Julie, I know you weren't able to get there this year, but um, I was pretty disappointed with the venue this year. This was the 40th year of ABA Tech Show, and um, a big celebratory year for them, a significant anniversary. It makes them, I think I think the second oldest legal tech conference still running, basically after Legal Week, which I think is maybe a couple of years older. But the tech show was good in a lot of ways. The programming was good, which is we can thank our usual panelist Steve Embry, who's not here today, but he was the co-chair along with Julie Bays out of Oklahoma. I thought they did a good job with that part of it, but the venue just really kind of drove me crazy. I don't know it's like a return to CleoCon in Nashville or something.
Well, good news. It sounds like Clock is moving there next year too. So,
Well, I will say not all McCormick Place conferences are created equal because I have been to one where they used the venue space literally right next to the hotel. So you didn't like, as opposed to where we came out and walked for another 15 minutes, very different experience. Like, yes, a bigger place and the downtown issues are still the same, but it did not feel like you were walking by aircraft hangars and abandoned hallways and whatnot.
Yeah, I will say as somebody who's been to the McCormick Place quite a few times, I went with my brother to a photography um like exhibition or conference or something, which you would also think would be not a lot of people. The space was like used in such an excellent way because it's visual that it also didn't feel like a big giant place. But just thinking of how Tech Show is in the past venue, I was worried about McCormick Place because the intimate feel of it actually kind of plays up to it. And
Yeah.
based on your recap, Bob, I was like, yeah, that's kind of what I felt like this year was gonna be. And even though it was the 40th anniversary, that's why I was okay to kind of miss this one. I'll definitely be there for next year because that location, uh, and it's not the best, not the best.
Bad news, they signed a 3-year contract, so you're gonna get to enjoy it next year.
So, in the comments going on right now, Sarah makes this point that they should have some food trucks there. And that actually was one of the issues that I had. I feel like I actually thought the venue was overall fine, but there is something to be said for all of the food court and stuff was closed. And a hotel has food. They're constantly trying to sell you more food. That's what hotel events people do. Meanwhile, here, there just wasn't that kind of food. And I think something needs to be done. I worry about this also for Legal Week at Javits Center. And at least at Javits Center, and I don't know how McCormick Place works, I also comparatively worry that they aren't able to get food trucks because I also worry that, for good or ill, I actually think on balance for good. Javits, at least, is heavily unionized, and I wonder if you can't just bring a bunch of food trucks in. So I don't know.
And on your Legal Week point, I'm still really good friends with the event planners there. And Bob, I sent the head of events your article, and I was like, "This could be a good case study for you about Java." She's like, "Oh my God, thank you for sending this. Can we chat about your experience?" I'm like, "Yes, happy to help you." So,
Oh,
yeah,
good, good, good.
yeah. I mean, who knows?
Uh,
I mean, there's only so much they can control, I'm sure, but she was very interested. I thought the interesting thing in your article was like pointing out that it was record attendance because it certainly did not feel like it. I think that's like when you don't run into anybody, it doesn't, I mean, when you're in such a more of a spread out place, it just doesn't feel crowded ever. Or not like, and not even like in a bad way crowded, like even in a habitated way
You,
crowded.
you know, it's interesting. Every time we talk about attendance, I feel like, at least on my perspective from as a press person, I feel like my understanding of attendance is always a little janky because I think it was record attendance attendees wise, whereas we tend to interface with vendor folks, where the fact that we weren't all crammed together meant that we didn't see them nearly as much because there was more room to spread out. But I mean, I definitely have felt like the last few years of Tech Show has been basically a ghost town, whereas this one, I felt like there were a ton of people. They weren't necessarily the vendors that I was talking to, but there were people milling around and in all those sessions whenever I would pop into a session, which I usually don't get to do because of vendor meetings, but because, again, for good or ill, this being immediately after legal week, nobody wanted to have a meeting with me because we all met at legal week. So I was able to go to sessions, and I felt like they were packed full of people more so than I usually see at sessions at places. So I think it's a question of like, when we say attendance, our feeling is like we tend to talk to vendors. And so we view the exhibit hall as what attendance means. But for the people throwing the show, I think the attendance was up. It just was not the people we tend to talk to.
Yeah,
but
I don't see it that way. I don't see the exhibit hall as the main thing. For me, it tends to be that, as I keep talking about, sort of a center of gravity to the conference, and I feel like Tech Show's always had at least some center space, maybe two center spaces, because there was always the bar in the Hyatt lobby where a lot of people congregated. But also, when you get to the conference itself in the former Hyatt location, there was that center space. There was the registration booth, and they'd have lunch right there, and the keynote was right in the room right off of that hallway, and programs were right around the corner from there, and the entrance exhibit hall was right there, and people were always sort of filling out that center space, and you felt this presence of people there. In this place, it had this like giant cavernous center space that so many people coming to me like, where are all the people? You'd like come into the entrance to this big supposedly teeming conference, and there would be like two or three people walking through that center place. It was like a ghost town. It was so weird.
That's what it felt like to me, Bob. And it's like when you plan a party, you have to have the room that is, and think of the size of the room and the amount of people that are going to fill it. And this was the situation where it was like throwing this conference in the middle of like the Carrier Dome in Syracuse or something. I mean, there was plenty of people, but they were just all over the place. And so normally where I would run into people in the hallway near the registration desk, whether it was at the Hilton years ago or at the Hyatt, here, the only place I really did run into people was when I was in the expo hall. Because there were no like general thoroughfares, like you're saying, to run into people. I ran into a lot of people, but it was always in the expo hall, and it was almost always when I was rushing off to go speak somewhere or something, so I couldn't even talk to them. So it
Hey,
was very
Nick.
weird.
Oh, hey, Nikki, tell us you're from upstate New York without telling us you're from upstate New York. It's
Listen,
big,
that's where
like the
I grew up.
Carrier Dome.
That's where I grew up. I grew up in Syracuse. It's big. The other thing I was gonna say though was I walk like half an hour a day. Like I have a walking treadmill desk, so I walk a decent amount. When I came home, my legs ached, my feet ached, my back and shoulders and neck ached from the backpack I had to carry for the whole walk for my computer because of my 4 talks that I did. Like my whole body ached. I was like, am I getting sick? No, it was just from like hiking in the Andes to get to this place. Like it was ridiculous.
Well, that was the other thing, to see some of the people who were like trekking back and forth from the hotel, and there were some who looked like, I mean, if you have any kind of mobility issues, that was a challenge. And if you're, older or just have other physical limitations of any kind, I don't know how some people did it.
Right?
Yeah, Bob's montage of empty hallways really did it for me. The photo montage of empty hallways. I was like, yeah, I mean, I know there were people there. I ran into people, but it was just not, it was just like in random places or walking past a random thing because they happened to be the 2 other people in the massive hallway. It was odd. And I mean, this is the first time I was with a company that had a booth. So like on the other side of it, so like sort of hanging around there too and getting the sense of like who walked by and who didn't. And like just talking to a lot of vendors about whether or not I feel like all the vendors met each other and like had a grand old time making friends, but that's not what they went there for. Most of them were saying there was very little like buyer law firm persona foot traffic. We got better, which wasn't helped by the weather because there's so many local people that just didn't even come in and everyone was so delayed that, I mean, it kind of got better the last day I heard, but still
Yeah,
not great.
the traffic flow is terrible because anybody who there's nothing that forces you to, exit through the gift shop. Like you want something where you have to go through the exhibit hall to get to anything useful. And the exhibit hall was nowhere near where any of the instruction stuff was. And so if you came as an attendee just for instruction stuff, you saw nothing.
The other thing
It's-
about this conference and last the legal week, I felt like there was no gathering at the hotel bar. That's like a huge thing of these conferences, at least for those of us that roll into the bars at like 10:30 or 11 and hang out there. There's no one
In the
there.
morning, 10:30, 11 in the morning.
Right?
You're right. There was none of that. There was no place where if you came back or you took a break and came down, you'd find everybody. Even though there
Yeah.
was a central bar, arguably. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a little bit. I mean, maybe was it just Friday? Somebody had it. I forget. There was like a little reception there one afternoon, and there were people hanging out in that bar. But yeah, I guess certainly not comparable to the Hyatt bar or the Hilton bar before that for at Tech Show.
One problem with hotel bars is that a lot of places do not have hotel bars that are built for that kind of world. There's a lot of hotel bars are like, we close at 11 or at most 12. Like the New York Hilton, like they will stay open till like, what is it, like 1 or something like that. They're built for a late night. And then if you want to stay out later, there's Faces and Names is right there. Like that's going to be a change in how we function at Legal Week too, because that's not going to be how we all are when we're scattered among a bunch of hotels.
Maybe those conferences, when they start moving to these conference centers, need to designate almost this is the late night bar of the conference, just not officially, just kind of like this is, or else someone has to choose it and send it across social media so everyone kind of knows where everyone else is going to kind of be.
Yeah, this is what I was gonna ask because it's there for the next 3 years, right? Because Hyatt's not available. So for next year, let's assume we all have the gravitas that ABA will listen to us. What are some things that they should do next year? Because I agree with you, the conferences that I have been to at McCormick, the organizers create that central space, right? Like the National Association for Black Journalists, they had their conference there last year. Like there's ways to do this, whether it's a stage or something. Like what should we do to kind of improve this experience? Cuz besides bringing hiking boots for next year, what else can I do to ensure that I see everybody that I need to see?
Do you have an electric scooter?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good idea.
The
Um,
Immigration Lawyers Association conference was there. I spoke at that in June, and it just felt so different. It felt there were these. It's like the place where the registration desk was a smaller area, and somehow I think it had like an escalator in the middle, so it squished everyone into one spot, and you had went right from there into the It was just a different location of that huge conference center, and it just felt more unified.
That's
and-
my question. We know what they're at McCormick for the next 3 years. Do we know if they have that lakeside center way out there, or are they just at the McCormick? Because if they have an opportunity to shift to a closer part of the conference center, that would do a lot as a first step.
Or what I heard a lot of people suggest is that you take the exhibit hall out of that side room it was in and put it right in that lakeside center area there that you come into. And then suddenly then
It's
you've got
massive.
everybody having to walk through the exhibit hall all the time.
Yeah.
And you see activity and I think that could be a good idea.
Yeah, and
The other
that's
thing we
on-
all heard, yeah, go
That's
ahead.
on the way to the session rooms too. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, the other thing, we all talked about the fact that so many of the vendors were jumping on this idea of like, having branded golf carts to take people back and forth from the hotel to the exhibit area, to the conference area. I don't know how far that gets you because I don't know, first of all, whether they let golf carts in there, but second, there were a few stairs and escalators that they'd have to navigate along the way, so I don't know if that would work. Yeah, if it were me, I would move the exhibit hall into that central area. Forget the whole side floor exhibit hall. I do the startup alley there. I also wasn't crazy. They had the startup alley in the exhibit hall this year. I wasn't crazy about that just because the acoustics were not too good, I don't think. It's weird. I had some people complaining that they couldn't hear a thing, and other people saying they had absolutely no problem, and it looked like they were probably standing side by side. So I don't know what was the truth of that, but
And I also think it's odd that so many of the hotel restaurants themselves were just not open. There are restaurants in that hotel that I've never seen open, ever. And they have conferences. Like that's what they do. I think more people that have events need to do it. Like where Nikki, your event was, that was like walkable as opposed to events all over Chicago, which I get why it's attractive to go to, the middle of Chicago. But if people figure out events closer, maybe that increases the community feel. Like yours was
I
great. It
guess
was a great venue. It was walkable.
I guess it's easier to convince people to go to places in the middle of Chicago when they like name drinks after you or something like that.
Well, we didn't talk about the best part of the conference, which was the conferences that we shared space with. I thought those are the
I
highlights of the
know.
conference too. The one that overlapped with it, the podcast one with all the famous aging rock stars, and then the chess one where we saw Nahal with his daughter. Nahal
Yeah, it
Madani,
was
go see
a
for the
young girls chess tournament was there. So there was all these like adorable little like daddy daughter lunch dates going on. There was also a cheer contest that was starting Friday into Saturday.
I think I saw the remnants of that too. Now that you mention it,
I would be so distracted. I love y'all in legal tech, but I would be like, which one of those am I going to try out this afternoon? Like that just sounds like so much fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and Nahal is the alt legal is the CEO. He was just kind of randomly, not randomly. He was there for the chess tournament, not for the legal tech conference, but obviously knew a lot of people there. That was
this
kind of
adorable
funny.
little daughter. She was so cute and
Adorable
quiet.
daughter. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny because this happened last year with Clio, right? When Clio moved into a conference center in Austin last year, and I think they managed it a little bit better, or maybe the space was better. But then they immediately had to get out of that conference center in Austin because what they're tearing it down or something to build a new one. So now Clio is going to be in Boston this year, and they're going to be in this place, the Heinz Convention Center, which if anybody's been to, was that AAL a couple of
Yeah,
years, they'll remember
years ago.
it was there. Which
So that was
I'm
a
not crazy about the Heinz because it's also kind of really spread out, and the hotel arrangement is like it's all in this part of this internal mall, but it's a long walk to get from one hotel to another, and to the Heinz again. So have that sort of center of gravity issue there as well. It'll be interesting to see how they manage that.
I'm very impressed that Cleo decided to do it alphabetically because if you can't be in Austin, you go to Boston. Like,
I thought it was a rhyming thing.
yeah, no, you go to Costin next if after this. We're gonna work our way.
All right. Hopefully we'll have Doug Austin speak at one of those things. Um, they were up. I know the Clio team was up in Boston last week, scoping it all out. So it'll be exciting to see what they do.
I mean, that's got to be a little rough thinking you have a 2-year thing planned there, and suddenly it's like, just kidding, we're demolishing the whole thing. Find
Yeah.
another city.
I'm trying to talk him into figuring out a way to come up to where I live and have a lobster bake or something up here on the North Shore, north of Boston, where we have a little town with lots of lobstering and fishing boats and other stuff, but kind of a haul from Boston, so I don't know if that'll happen.
Can I recommend the Carrier Dome to them? I think that would be great.
In
Well,
like February, yeah.
isn't your and why isn't LawPay my case doing their
Yeah, there you
conference in
go.
the Carrier Dome?
I don't think they
I think
call
they
it
do
the Carrier
conferences
Dome
there.
anymore. I think they lost that naming right. But my favorite
I
part of
think
the
you're right.
Carrier Dome always was that it was not air conditioned, despite being named after an air conditioning company.
I don't remember that. I went to some of the best concerts there when I was a kid because they could still have concerts. So it was the biggest concert venue in like all of New York except for New York City. I saw some fantastic conferences. Now they don't
It
hold them
is
there.
it is now the JMA Wireless Dome.
Just
Well,
rolls
that's
off
the
the
name that
tongue.
rolls off the tongue.
Yeah. Why not Denver? I keep saying more things should be in Denver. A summer conference in Denver sounds wonderful.
I agree. I love
I
Denver.
agree with that too. I love Colorado.
I think wasn't AAL was there too a couple years ago, right?
Hmm.
I was in Denver for something a couple years ago. No, I can't remember what. Too many conferences. All right. Anything else about ABA Tech Show? I mean, as I said, the program seemed pretty good. I didn't get to a lot of panels, but everything I heard was good on the programming. Coria Doctorow was the keynote speaker. Again, a reference back to AAO, I think is where Steve Embry first saw him deliver the keynote a couple of years ago and wanted him to come to Tech Show. He's always a good speaker and somewhat able to be thoughtful but timely and relevant in terms of what's going on in the world these days too. So that was a good choice. Any other thoughts, comments? We did, as Joe alluded to, we did have a drink named, Stephanie and I had drinks named after ourselves.
We did.
A Bob Father, and what was yours?
Wilkins Writ. Up
Yeah,
high,
but
high.
I did not. So Cocktail Gate, as I've called it, needs to that controversy needs to continue as we
It can only
don't
continue
care.
if it ever started, and it never started.
I don't care. I really don't get like Smokeball folks seemed like very, oh no, I'm sorry. And I was like, I really don't care. But I do think it's really funny if I pretend to care. So I'm gonna do that because I think it's funny.
All right, what would be a drink name for Joe? The Gonzo something? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, my argument, which this is a fake quote, but it's one that I'm going with. Smokeball was like, well, we named those drinks after them because we thought that might make them come. And to get you to come, we just made them free. So okay. I see. This is the problem with Zoom. Everybody no. Everyone mutes themselves. So when you start giggling, it doesn't show up. I just get to see it. And then this comes out on a podcast and everybody thinks I bomb.
Tell yourself we were all laughing. Go ahead.
We're sorry, Joe. We're making a joke as you're making the joke. We're sorry.
Just need to unmute yourselves occasionally. All right.
We need a narrator. The narrator. Everyone laughed. Back to the podcast.
Yes, like Arrested Development. Let's get that person. Was it Ron Howard who did the narration?
Yeah.
Sure
Yeah.
was.
Let's get him to narrate this show. That'll be easy. Bob, give him a call.
All right.
Ooh,
Should we talk about something else?
maybe.
Like avatars in court? We never talked about that before, have we?
Yeah, so this actually was a thing that happened a few weeks ago, but we've been so busy running from show to show that we haven't talked about it. While we were at Legal Week, like a day or so after we actually had dinner with one of the judges involved, some of us, there was a hearing in New York where one of the appellants, a pro se guy, had had made a motion to do something by video, like an audiovisual presentation. I'm like, whatever, fine, it was granted. And that audiovisual presentation begins, and it's like a bro in a quarter zip who starts giving the oral argument, and it's immediately shut down by the judges, going like, "What's this?" And apparently, the pro se guy scripted his oral argument. And felt like, as you know, he's not a lawyer, he felt like having AI deliver it would be more convincing. So he made an AI avatar and had it try to give his oral argument for him. The judges were less than pleased by this situation and really mocked him and, started yelling at him. I will say about it, so to set the discussion, what do we think about this as something going forward? Because there is something to be said for pro se folks. The deck is stacked against them in a million and one ways. A lot of them are not natural speakers, and so to some extent, being able to deliver their message in a clear way makes some sense. I thought there could be some accessibility issues, although the judge actually did foreground that and say that this person has spoken in front of them before, so it's not as though there was an accessibility reason to turn this over to AI. Ultimately, I think no, but I think it's still bad for pro se people to use AI in this way. But I'm interested to hear what the logic is, because I can see both arguments. I say no, but what do we think about opening up the space a little bit to people who may not feel comfortable talking by letting them use AI?
I thought it was a lawyer who was appearing on their own behalf, no? So
So it could be that it was a lawyer on their own behalf. I know it was a pro se person. If it was a lawyer, that might be that actually adds a lot more to the problem. But
I was trying to find where the original story came from, because I thought, I'll have to look it up and see.
Yeah, I'm actually not opposed to this. And maybe people are going to be surprised by this, but after working for a law society and talking to people directly about lack of access, there are so many accessibility issues to speaking in a courthouse or in front of a judge, whether it's virtual or in person, besides language. And so, you know, as somebody who's been asked to read a piece of paper of something someone wrote because they're too afraid to, there's just so many things. And so at the same time, we are telling people that they can use AI for their legal information needs and other type of things. Now, while AI is not going to replace lawyers altogether, I feel like there should just be some guidance on this. But I'm not opposed to this idea. There's just a lot of there's just a lot of things about going to court and going in front of an adjudicator that people don't know. And any
yeah,
tools that can help some folks, I can see that being helpful. Even if people do have English as their first language, they don't know legal language. They don't know how to present evidence if they're asked to in a small claims court. Anyway, I'm curious what people think, but I'm actually okay with this. I just feel like people need education on how to do it.
I mean, if we're limiting it to, pro se litigants or, yeah, I'm okay with that. I don't want it to open the door to like, oh, my client's really a jerk. Maybe we should send an avatar that people won't hate in his place, that kind of thing.
I
on the
don't
other
see
hand,
the
that's what lawyers are. Their lawyers are already an avatar that's trying to make jerks look better.
No, but I mean, in terms of if it opens up to like witnesses
Yeah.
and whatnot, is what I mean.
Oh God, yeah.
yeah. I don't see the problem on an appellate at an appellate court. I honestly don't. If it's a trial court, then maybe you could argue, even for somebody presenting an argument, maybe there are credibility issues, or you want to be able to see their facial expressions or see how believable they look, or something like that. But an appellate argument, you're just presenting an argument. I mean, I don't see if the person didn't have any visual presence, if they were just just on purely on audio presenting the argument, that would be fine. So why would having an avatar make any difference versus what the person actually looks like? I understand that it's recorded and that's an issue, but as long as the person presenting the argument is there available to take questions from the appellate panel, after the argument is concluded, and again, we know judges like to start interrupting you as soon as you start making your argument, and so if it's pre-recorded, that may be an issue. But yeah, I basically kind of agree with Julie. I just don't see a problem with it, and I think in some cases it might help people overcome fear or anxiety about presenting a case, especially on a pro se level.
So one of the arguments I made in my article about why I kind of came down against it is not against it as a concept, but against it as like there's a reason why you shouldn't be doing this if you're a pro se person. Is in my experience with pro se folks, you're probably better off letting the judges interject. A lot of the times when judges interject like that, it's because they know that your script is bad and they're doing the thing to be like, well, what about this? In my experience, even when they ultimately rule against pro se litigants, most judges like do the teasing out of like, let's see if we can help you make a better argument than you know how to make. So I feel like when you lock yourself into a script with your time, a lot of time, you're doing yourself a disservice and probably putting yourself behind the eight ball on with the judges, and some of whom, especially on a panel, might be inclined to help you, try to help you help yourself. I will say in the comments, Sarah raises this point about with unconscious bias issues, if we could make everyone a white guy, how would that change things? And there was an aspect of that to this story too. Like the avatar was not, a woman of color giving an argument. It was the most Chad-like bro I've ever seen with a quarter zip. And
What was the
there is
actual person?
older white guy.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so the decision for what this is going to be my best way of making my argument was, here's this like tech bro white guy look. And there is something to be said for that, pushing back against unconscious bias. On the other hand, there's a level of bias introduced by the idea that, oh, let's just replace everybody with the neutral of young white dude. Doesn't sound great either.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Joe. You're just flashing me back to pro bono work where people would ask me if there was a white male version of me that could help them. I did, which is anyway. We're not gonna go into it. It's okay. But you just be like, actual lawyer talking to you right now. So I agree with you about all of that. But in terms of what you were saying about pro se litigants, and it's good for them to have people interrupt them and all of this. Again, they don't know that. There's so much they don't know, and I think the thing about this is choice, right? Like, first of all, this person didn't let the judge know what they were going to do. Don't surprise
Right.
judges. Like,
Exactly. I was about to
I
say.
mean, there's just like, anybody I talk to who's going to self-rep, don't surprise them. Okay, if don't surprise whatever you're gonna do. Let everybody know. Let the clerks know. Let the judges know what you're gonna do before you do it. But also options, right? Like giving the person the option of, and this is how it's going to work. In the same way we have language interpretation and translation and all these other things going on in the courts that may seem very basic to us, but I was talking to a translator recently about AI and law language and how there's a lot of complexity to that. We just need to give them choices, because I know what you're saying. For some people, it would be better actually to just speak their truth and let judges help them out through the cases, but people don't know that. And so that's what I mean by guidelines. Like, you're not going to be able to pick the avatar you want. We're going to pick the avatar, right? Like, there's 4 different avatars, and you get one of 4 of them based on XYZ, right? And this is the voice it's going to have. It's going to be a female voice. No, you can't have whatever. Whatever. And you put parameters around it. Otherwise, we are going to get tech pro voices in the court. But I don't think again, I think we can't assume that pro se litigants will know how to navigate this. Lawyers don't even know how to navigate this. And lawyers using avatars in court, that's a whole other issue. Why are we doing that? We don't, no. That's a no.
I love what you said about surprising judges, because that video is the best, because it's not just judges, it's downstate New York appellate judges. Like, they are like no nonsense, no bullshit. And the woman judge was just not having it. Like, the minute it's like within a minute of it starting, not even like 10 seconds, she's like, all right, what is happening? That's enough. Like, the video is the best watch of the day, I think. I loved it.
That was Justice Kennedy? Was that the woman judge talking about? Yeah. No. She was
I don't remember which one. it was.
Justice Kennedy was on the panel, but
but she
it
wasn't the
was
one.
not Justice Kennedy who was not the presiding judge.
Yeah. The irony is there's kind of a flip side to the whole issue about pro se people going into court, which is there have been some studies that have come out that have shown in certain kinds of cases, like in eviction cases, that sometimes pro se litigants do better than represented litigants in the courtroom, because judges have some leeway to be somewhat sympathetic to their circumstances, and are sometimes more sympathetic to their circumstances when they're in there by themselves presenting, facing getting thrown out of their home, or whatever it might be. There was a kind of a notorious study that came out of Harvard. This is 10 years ago, if not more now, but tracking results in housing court in Massachusetts when of pro se litigants versus litigants represented by, it was a lawyer for the day program, not full representation, but the pro se actually did better overall than those who had a lawyer for the day in those cases. So no avatars there. All right, Stephanie, you also, I think another interesting story that kind of came up while we were all off on the road for the last couple of weeks, but
Yeah, I think it was last week. Definitely, I was pretty sure we hadn't spoken about it, but
no,
yes,
we haven't.
this UK law firm Shoosmiths announced that they were putting together a potential, it'll be split, but a £1 million bonus pot for if their staff hits 1 million Microsoft Copilot prompts in a year. And so it basically is giving bonuses for AI usage, but there's a lot more to it. I have a lot of questions. Like, sure, maybe in theory, because I actually wrote a column about this week about like how you incentivize people to learn AI. I mean, carrots, sticks, blah, blah, blah. But this is a little weird. And I mean, I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt because it's on their website. I'll find the link. And the people say, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. I'm like, well, you literally tied it to quantity, like by definition. But then also, like, why only Copilot? Does it have to actually be good prompting? Does it have to, I mean, if I can just iterate on my prompt 5 times meaninglessly just to jack up the number to get the money, is that doing any good? Like, what are you trying to justify your Copilot license? I don't even know. Like, the whole thing is just a really bizarre idea to me that, I mean, maybe in the long run, it will encourage AI adoption and use and it'll be a great thing. It's just, it struck me as a very odd way to go about it. And then made me wonder if down the line, conversely, are we going to start being like withholding bonuses and whatever for not using technology, which that's a whole other question. But it was very, very odd. I'm curious of other people's takes on it because I didn't really quite know what to do with it.
Not really a take real quick, but it is worth noting Shoosmiths is kind of been at the forefront of like things like this for a while. Like they were the first firm that I know of that had an official TikTok account. So they like being at the bleeding edge of tech.
Which is why I say I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, but it's curious.
I have a question, and it might not be obvious, but I wonder how much it costs them to partner. It says to partner with Copilot, and I'm wondering if they just bought the license, the enterprise license with Microsoft Copilot early on and said we're all in, or if there's something else behind it. And the reason why I'm asking this question is because if they made a substantial financial investment, right, with Microsoft Copilot, and we all know this can scale, with Copilot, if they did more than the usual and they know people are not using it, that's a problem for the firm, right? Because it's one thing to be on the forefront of innovation and another thing to actually not have people use the thing that you purchased. And so I think this is the nerd in me is like, how can I game the system?
Oh, well, immediately I was
Right?
like,
give me
well,
recipes, give me,
yeah.
we'll
Or
get it.
even if it is, I'm like, yeah, do the prompts have to be legitimately work related? Or if they are, can you just be like, oh, I changed my mind, change the name Smith to Jones. My bad. It's actually Thompson, like, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I can think of 20 different prompts for the title of a blog post. 20 different prompts. Like, and it'll show, right? All the different prompts and everything when I really only needed two. I just anyway, I just wonder if this is more, this is so cynical of me to bring up the cost, but like as Joe said, this is a firm that does have experience doing things. And I just wonder if they just spent a lot of money already and they're looking at the numbers and they're like, shoot, people are still not using it. Even though we all know there's data that more lawyers are using AI tools, but our firm is not. Like they're probably
Well, and
scratching their heads about this, right?
And it's that specific tool, right? It's a Copilot prompt. And they even said in their post on their website, the blog or whatever it was, that was like, honestly, if everybody just did 4 prompts a day, so it was something like, we have no problem hitting this. I'm like, if there was no problem hitting it, why do you have to have this incentive in place?
Yeah, it is weird. And the closing quote of their blog post is, this is not just about how many times someone uses AI, it's about how well we use it and the benefits it will have for our clients. But it seems like it's just about how many times someone uses it. I don't see
Yeah.
how it how
They're
it has to do
saying
with how
it's
well they use
quality.
it.
Yeah, they're saying it's quality, not quantity, but then the literal target is quantity.
Yeah.
But maybe the idea is just this will incentivize them to use it, and once they use it, they'll be like, oh, I see how I can use this, and so maybe it's. But that if that was the case, wouldn't it just be like a short-term 1 month bonus, and if you use it 100 times over the next month rather than this million, was it a million?
A million. And it's not per person, it's a pooled bonus and a million across the firm. So it's not even like you're getting everyone to use it necessarily.
I mean, I get all these arguments about quantity versus quality, but I mean, this is how we pay lawyers right now, right? Like the same logic applies to, well, doesn't this set the incentive to just rack up giant bills based on hours and hours of work doing nothing? I'm like, yeah, exactly, buddy. Yeah, no, it is based on this idea that we all quantity versus quality, and we kind of trust that the lawyers are going to do quality. So I kind of feel like we're again trusting the lawyers to do quality. Whether or not that's fair or not, it is something we do a lot.
Right. But I mean, the thing I contrasted it with in my column was there's a handful of firms out there that give innovation credit, right? Like the same way you would get billable hours credit for pro bono work, you'll get billable hours credit towards innovation or when they rolled out AI activities or things like that, where people, it was actually being involved in programs and things that were not just, clicking a button. So I think that's another incentive, but I think that in my mind, that is more open to quality than quantity. I don't know. I mean, maybe it will work. Maybe it will spur, maybe like you said, people get into it, they like it, it makes people want to use it more and it will have the desired effect. I don't know. I just thought it was definitely a headline clicker.
Yeah, I think your excuse me, I think your other question is actually to me a little bit more interesting, which is will firms start to um basically uh I don't want to say punish, but you know what I mean in terms of if you don't use AI, right? Like some people in the chat have mentioned monitoring, and we already know monitoring is happening. That's a whole other conversation about how firms monitor people, whether it's hours or how they use different tools. But if we eventually will get to the other tip of the scale where if you don't use this, we're going to kind of, that's going to be something that's counted against you at the end of the year when it comes to bonuses and things like that. So especially if we're actually going to talk about client satisfaction, we already know clients are asking for stuff like this for efficiencies, especially at the GC level. So I'm just wondering if this is part of it because as Joe said, we already have a system of quantity. So just as we give, we'll also take away in terms of those financial incentives.
To me, the question is the tipping point if and when we do get to that more penalty sort of phase is because we've all said, eventually tech competence, lawyers need to use this. Eventually, somewhere down the road, it'll be malpractice to not be doing this stuff and insisting on doing it another way. And if it's at that point, the more penalty kind of structure makes more sense to me. It's just a question of if and when we make that tip. I don't know.
I don't know. We have tech competency pretty much. Bob would know this better, but like almost every jurisdiction now in the US, right? So,
But I
Still,
think
there are still
when we
10 that don't
start,
have it, I think, maybe 9, something
okay.
like that.
but when do we start defining tech competency as you are incompetent if you are completely not using it,
Yeah, I don't know where the US is in this conversation, but in Canada, because we have AI usage guidance pretty much from every major regulator in Canada, plus the courts, I do think if you were a lawyer who was doing something that AI could do, or you're using AI obviously not in the way you should, you would get dinged for it in terms of professional uh responsibility. I anyone here on the chat, let me know. I'll ask Amy at U Ottawa. But I'm pretty sure because the guidance is more so it's like we know you're using it. This is how you're using it, as opposed to if you're using it or not using it. Because I can already think of scenarios now where you would be it's like e-discovery. I know we don't say e-discovery anymore because that would just be AI, frankly. But like I wouldn't go through electronic records without some sort of tool like that, right? That would be malpractice for sure. And that tool is probably AI enabled or enhanced at this point.
I think it's with tech when tech becomes so common that to not use it, it does become malpractice. And like I think social media is a really good example of that because that's something had been tracking and write about since the beginning. And in the beginning, you really didn't even need to understand it in the very beginning because it was just sort of like a marketing thing and there weren't a lot of people on it. But then the more prevalent it became, the more you sort of had to understand whether to use it in your practice or not, so you could make an educated decision. But then when it became sort of ingrained in our culture, a lot of lawyers, especially litigators, if they did not understand social media and track social media, understand how their clients were using it, and understand social media evidence, then it became malpractice if they were not tracking and understanding these things. But that's when it became like fully ingrained in our culture and in our society and the way that we communicate and do business. And so I think it becomes a tipping point. And even now with on the cloud, I think we're getting to the point where it's arguably, you could, it's a security issue. I don't know if it's necessarily malpractice, but it could be malpractice if you don't use the cloud. It could be getting to that tipping point because everything's in the cloud. And if you don't have it in the cloud, it's now considered less secure to have like stuff premises based. So I think it's when it becomes so common and there's sort of a tipping point that it just, and I don't think we've reached that with AI yet, but we're certainly going to reach it a lot quicker than we have with these other technologies simply because it's advancing so quickly. So it'll be interesting for sure. It's a great question though.
A couple things, actually, something I meant to mention when we were talking about Techshow earlier was this, I mentioned the Startup Alley, but I wanted to mention that for the first year ever, we had a tie in the two companies that won the pitch competition. One was a company called Casecrafter, which is kind of a sort of a timelines on steroids kind of thing, using Gen AI to create really visually compelling and sort of more information-packed timelines. That was a good company, but the other one that won was actually unlike anything I'd really kind of ever seen before. It was called Curious, and I know we've talked on this show before about these sort of deposition tools that kind of provide you insights in real time as you're conducting a deposition, suggesting conflicts in the testimony or whether you've achieved certain goals. Well, this is sort of like that for client interviews. I mean, basically, it's the idea of this is it's while you're in conducting a client interview, it's tipping you off to legal issues that may be coming up in the discussion or suggesting documents from the client's file that may be relevant to what you're talking about, suggesting questions you might want to ask, all in real time while you're having this interview. And then as soon as you're kind of done with the interview, then it immediately gives you the summary of the meeting. It prepares all your billing entries for the meeting, and does some other stuff that I'm forgetting here. But I thought that was a really clever tool. I have not seen anything quite like that yet. And I think it's a really interesting use of Gen AI. And, I don't know if anybody else got a chance to see that or what they thought
Yeah,
about it.
I saw it and I thought the same thing. It reminded me of the deposition tool that we've talked about in the past. And it seems like a logical extension of that.
I think sorry, go ahead. Go, Stephanie.
I was gonna say it seemed really useful to me too, because also like if we're having a conversation and your client goes on some tangent and starts throwing out all these acronyms and you're like, what even is all of this? It will feed you that stuff too and help you get it back on track. And it does not retain the transcript, which is interesting. It's just for your notes while you're doing it, which I thought it was super interesting.
Yeah.
I'm on the other side of this. So I think that I'm trying to think of, when I was doing depositions, and in this case, client intake, those are both situations where you need to be listening carefully to what the person's saying to you, right? Because whether it's a deposition or client intake, what they're telling you is important because it may lead, you may need to ask another question, a follow-up question that you otherwise wouldn't have thought to ask, to get the information you need to do your job appropriately in that specific situation. If you've got this little like thing in your ear or in front of you that you're trying to like track and follow, and it's like, this person said this, maybe you want to look into this, or this person, like I can see at the very end of it, doing a quick review, like let me step out of the room for a minute, seeing what it caught, looking at its analysis, and then coming back and realizing you may have missed something or that you should have followed up on something or there was an inconsistency in the testimony. And then you follow up on it. But the real-time feedback feels to me like it would just be overwhelming and it would prevent you from listening and paying attention to the job at hand. So I wonder how it's actually going to be applied in the real world and what that's going to look like.
Yeah,
They do
I
all
have to-
function as a side, just as a side pane. So you're still in the thing you're in, not taken out of it. And it's over here and you can decide how much you want to pay attention to it. But go ahead. Sorry, Julie.
No, that's okay. I was just gonna say I would be easily distracted. I'm with Nikki. I can't be talking to you and looking at a side thing at the same time because I'm also like trying to figure out who you are. I'm trying to read your soul. Sorry, that sounds creepy, but I try to get to know you as a person, right? Like especially as a client. And so while I am listening to the facts and all of that, I'm trying to figure out is this the kind of person that I ever want to testify anywhere or do a deposition anywhere? Because maybe you're given those vibes, or maybe I want to make sure that everyone hears you because you're given and I don't want to be looking at a screen at the same time. And one of the other things I was thinking about reading about this company, the adoption of this, there's some attorneys that are just they're not going to want to look at a screen and talk to a client at the same time. Think of the struggle, guys, that we've had with electronic tools and dictation. Like, I've never used a dictaphone, but like as somebody who recently went to law school within the past 10 to 15 years, I have people that went to school with me that had to use a dictaphone because, they worked at a firm that couldn't use the current electronic tools. Like, there's just some people, real-time things is just, they're not going to adopt that. So I think for certain lawyers, this will work. But I like the idea of looking at it after you've done the interview.
Sure. Like, I think there's something to be said for, yes, a lot of lawyers are, not tech savvy. And that is gonna be true no matter what. I just felt like, yes, but we don't cater around them. Like those folks who like to look into people's souls are going to keep looking into people's souls. Actually, they're probably not even going to do that because they don't understand how Zoom works in the first place. So they're like on the phone or whatever. But I thought of it, and part of this might have been just like the nature of the practice that I did. I thought of it very much as saving money because so many of my conversations would be I'm there talking to them about some SEC investigation going on, and a question comes up like, well, if we did this and this, and then what if we did this, and then what would the tax implication of that be? And the answer for me would be I have no idea. I'm going to look stupid, but I'm going to call our tax people and get back to you later and blah, blah, blah. Now I have a thing that says, look, I don't actually know, and I will verify this, but our best guess is that this is the tax implication. If it's not, I will get back to you, but I don't have to force you onto another call. This is probably the answer. We'll deal with it later. Like little things like that add up, I feel like, especially when you're like dealing with clients who have multi-practice issues.
I mean,
Because
I hear you.
yeah,
I hear you all on the sort of the multitasking issue. But we're all sitting here right now. We're watching the chat. We're talking to each other. We're probably doing Google research in the background. Joe's probably written about 5 blog posts during this show. And so I guess that means none of you are looking into my soul while we're sitting here working because that's not possible to do all of that at once. We are out of time for today. I did want to mention last week we recorded this show. We did it live at Techshow. We weren't able to stream it out, but I've got the audio. We're not too sure about the video, but I haven't gotten it posted yet. I'm sorry to say, but hopefully by the time we're back here next week, we'll have had last week's audio also posted. If people want to go back, it was a good conversation there, and I appreciate Techshow hosting us to do that, and maybe we'll have that soon. Otherwise, I guess that's it for this week, and hope to see you all back here next week. Thanks for doing it.
Have a good weekend, all.